My name is Lucy, and I'm 32 years old. I never expected my high school reunion would turn into such a life-changing moment. When Tyler and his friends surrounded me laughing at my casual outfit and mocking me for not having a real job, I just smiled. Little did they know I owned the very tech company that signed their paychecks. Sometimes it's best to let people reveal who they truly are before you show your cards. If you're watching this video, drop a comment letting me know where you're from. Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever wanted to witness instant karma in action. Now let me tell you what happened when I walked into my company the next day. I grew up in a middle-class family in Portland, Oregon. We weren't poor, but we definitely weren't rich either. My parents both worked hard jobs to make sure we had everything we needed. My dad was an electrician who often worked overtime, and my mom was an elementary school teacher. They instilled in me the value of hard work from a very young age. Even as a child, I had that entrepreneurial spirit burning inside me. While other kids were playing with dolls, I was setting up lemonade stands on hot summer days, calculating my profits, and figuring out ways to attract more customers. By the time I was 12, I had started a successful babysitting business in our neighborhood, complete with business cards I designed and printed at the local library. My parents would often find me scribbling business ideas in notebooks instead of watching TV. High school was a different story altogether. I attended Westridge High, where, like most high schools, the social hierarchy was clearly defined. I excelled academically, consistently making the honor roll and winning science competitions, but socially, I was often overlooked. I wasn't unpopular per se, but I definitely wasn't part of the in crowd. I had my small group of like-minded friends, and we were content focusing on our studies and planning for college. Tyler Anderson was the quintessential popular guy. Quarterback of the football team prom king, and came from one of the wealthiest families in town. His father owned several car dealerships across the state, and Tyler never let anyone forget it. He drove a brand new sports car to school, while most of us took the bus or drove hand-me-down vehicles from our parents. What made Tyler particularly unpleasant wasn't just his privilege, but how he wielded it. He and his group of friends took pleasure in belittling those they considered beneath them, which included pretty much anyone who wasn't in their social circle. They had a particular disdain for the nerds like me who prioritized academics over parties. "Have fun being poor" was one of his favorite taunts when passing by students studying in the library. After graduation, I attended Stanford University on a partial scholarship majoring in computer science. College was where I truly found myself. Surrounded by like-minded individuals who valued intelligence and innovation, I thrived. I joined coding clubs, participated in hackathons, and interned at several tech startups during summer breaks. For the first time, being smart wasn't something to hide, but something to celebrate. My early career wasn't without challenges, though. After graduating with honors, I landed a job at one of the leading tech companies in Silicon Valley. The pay was good, but the culture was brutal. 80-hour work weeks were the norm, and the competition among colleagues was fierce. My direct manager took credit for my ideas and constantly undermined my contributions. After 2 years, I moved to another company, hoping for a better environment, but found similar issues there. It was during my third job in the industry that I began to see a pattern not just in how these companies treated their employees, but also in how they approached their products. There was a significant gap in the market for specialized software in healthcare data management that prioritized both security and user experience. Most existing solutions were either secure but clunky, or user-friendly, but lacking in protection for sensitive data. At 27, I took the biggest risk of my life. I quit my job, cashed in my modest savings, and started my own company, Montgomery Health Analytics. The first few months were terrifying. I worked out of my small apartment, often pulling all-nighters to develop the initial prototype of our software. I managed to convince 2 former colleagues to join me, and we started with just 3 employees total. The turning point came when we secured our first major client, a regional hospital network that was willing to take a chance on our innovative approach. Their glowing testimonial opened doors to more clients, and within a year, we had grown to 15 employees and moved into a proper office space. 5 years later, Montgomery Health Analytics has become an industry leader in healthcare data management. We employ 150 people across 3 offices in different states. Last year, we were valued at $75 million and were projected to double that within the next 2 years. The software we developed is now used by over 300 healthcare facilities nationwide. Despite this success, I've maintained a philosophy of humble leadership. I don't believe in flashing wealth or power. I still drive the same reliable Honda I bought when we secured our first major client. I don't wear designer clothes or flash expensive jewelry. My employees know me as approachable and down to earth. Many of our newer hires don't even recognize me as the CEO when they first meet me, which I actually prefer. I want to be judged by my ideas and how I treat people, not by my title. This low-profile approach extends to my personal life as well. I rarely attend industry galas or public events unless it directly benefits the company. I've turned down features in business magazines and declined invitations to speak at conferences that seemed more interested in tokenizing me as a female founder than in the actual work we do. So when the invitation to my 10-year high school reunion arrived in my inbox, my first instinct was to delete it. What was the point of revisiting a place where I had felt so out of place? But something made me reconsider. Perhaps it was curiosity about how people had changed. Or maybe it was a desire for some form of closure on that chapter of my life. After much deliberation, I RSVP'd. Yes, not out of a desire to show off my success, but simply to reconnect with the few good friends I had made during those years. When asked to provide information for the Alumni Achievement section, I requested privacy. I didn't want my attendance to be about my business success. I just wanted a normal evening reconnecting with old acquaintances. Little did I know that this decision would lead to one of the most surprising confrontations of my adult life, and ultimately to an important lesson in leadership that would reshape my company's culture. The day of the reunion arrived with a mix of emotions swirling inside me. Part of me was excited to see some of my old friends, particularly those I had lost touch with over the years. Another part was anxious, worried that the same social dynamics from high school might somehow reassert themselves and leave me feeling like that overlooked 16-year-old all over again. I spent more time than I cared to admit trying to decide what to wear. Should I dress to impress in designer clothes I could now easily afford? Should I wear something that screamed successful businesswoman? In the end, I opted for authenticity over impression. I chose dark wash jeans, a simple but elegant silk blouse, and low heels. Comfortable but put together. I wore minimal makeup and left my long brown hair down in loose waves. A small pair of pearl earrings that had belonged to my grandmother were my only accessories. The reunion was being held at a local country club, a venue that would have been impossibly fancy for a school event back in the day, but apparently appropriate for adults revisiting their glory days. I arrived a little late, intentionally wanting to slip in without too much fanfare. The ballroom was decorated with our school colors, blue and gold streamers hanging from the ceiling, and old yearbook photos projected on screens around the room. A banner reading, "Westridge High School Class of 2013, hung above the stage where a DJ was playing hits from our teenage years. As I made my way through the crowd, I was pleasantly surprised by how many people remembered me and approached with genuine warmth. My former lab partner from AP Chemistry was now a research scientist. The quiet girl from my English class had become a published author. It was fascinating to see how people had evolved and grown beyond the rigid social categories of high school. Lucy Montgomery, I was hoping you'd be here. I turned to see Sarah Chen, one of my closest friends from the math club, rushing toward me with open arms. We hadn't seen each other in person since college, though we kept in touch on social media. Sarah, you look amazing. I hugged her tightly, genuinely happy to see a friendly face. So do you? I've been following your company's success online. It's incredible what you've built, she said, keeping her voice low enough that only I could hear. Thanks, but tonight I'm just Lucy from calculus class. Okay, I'm not here to network or talk business, I replied with a smile. Sarah understood immediately and gave me a conspiratorial wink. Your secret's safe with me. As we caught up on each other's lives, I couldn't help but notice Tyler and his group across the room. They had claimed a table near the bar and were being as loud and attention-seeking as they had been in high school. Tyler had maintained his athletic build, though his face showed the effects of too many late nights. He was surrounded by the same group of friends who had been his entourage in high school, including James, Derek, and Matt. From snippets of conversation that carried across the room, I gathered they were bragging about their jobs at an amazing tech company that was revolutionizing healthcare, or something similarly hyperbolic. They were drinking heavily, getting louder with each round, and occasionally scanning the room as if assessing who was worth talking to. I deliberately steered Sarah in the opposite direction, more interested in catching up with our former teachers who had been invited to the event. Mrs. Rodriguez, my AP Computer Science teacher, who had encouraged my love of coding, was particularly delighted to hear about my career path. Though I kept the details of my company's success vague. The venue was beautifully set up with round tables elegantly decorated with centerpieces featuring our graduation year. The food was arranged as a high-end buffet with carving stations and a variety of options that far surpassed our cafeteria meals from high school. The music transitioned from current hits to nostalgic songs from our teenage years, creating a soundtrack that transported many of us back in time. Midway through the evening, Jennifer Davis, our former class president, who had organized the reunion, took to the stage to make some announcements. She went through a list of alumni achievements: doctors, lawyers, a state representative, someone who had competed in the Olympics. I was relieved that she respected my request for privacy and didn't mention my company. As the night progressed, I found myself genuinely enjoying reconnecting with people. The adult versions of my classmates were for the most part more mature and interesting than their teenage counterparts had been. Even some of the former popular crowd had evolved into thoughtful, engaging adults. Unfortunately, Tyler and his friends seemed to be the exception to this growth. As they became increasingly intoxicated, their behavior regressed to high school levels of immaturity. They were loud, interrupting conversations and making somewhat inappropriate comments to some of the women present. I was in the middle of a conversation with my former debate team partners when I noticed Tyler approaching our group. His walk had the slight unsteadiness of someone who had been drinking steadily all evening, and his smile had that forced quality of someone trying too hard to appear friendly. Well, if it isn't the brain trust," he said, his voice carrying more than necessary. "Lucy Montgomery. Didn't think you'd show up to one of these things." "Hello, Tyler," I replied politely but coolly. "Good to see you too." "So what are you up to these days?" he asked in that way people do when they're not actually interested in the answer, but are setting up for something else. "I work in tech," I said, simply, not elaborating. "Tech? Huh? Like it's support or something." He smirked, looking back at his friends who had now joined him. "Something like that," I replied, not taking the bait. "You should talk to us about real tech jobs," James chimed in, slinging an arm around Tyler's shoulders for support. "We work for this amazing healthcare software company. Pretty big deal." My stomach did a small flip. I had known from LinkedIn that Tyler worked in tech, but I hadn't connected that he might be at my company. We had acquired a smaller firm about 8 months ago, bringing on their employees, including some middle managers I hadn't personally met. Could it be— "Oh, really?" I asked, my interest genuinely piqued now. "Which company?" "Montgomery Health Analytics," Derek announced proudly, as if dropping a prestigious name I wouldn't recognize. "I'm sure you've never heard of it, but it's pretty much revolutionizing the healthcare data space." I had to use every ounce of self-control not to react visibly. These men worked for my company. My company. And they were standing here condescending to me about it. "I think I might have heard of it," I said mildly. "I'm in charge of client implementation," Tyler boasted, puffing up his chest. "Just got a promotion last quarter. James here handles security protocols, and Matt and Derek are in development." "That's interesting." I managed my mind racing to place them in our organizational chart. They must have come in with the AccuHealth acquisition earlier in the year. That team worked from our secondary office location, which explained why I hadn't encountered them directly. "What about you, Lucy?" Tyler pressed his tone, becoming more condescending. "Still doing those little computer programs you used to talk about in high school?" "I'm in the industry," I repeated, deliberately vague. "Entry-level stuff?" Matt asked with a smirk. "80 help desk data entry." "Some of us actually have real careers," Tyler said, his voice getting louder as he warmed to his audience of friends. "What's it like not having a real job, still living with your parents?" His friends laughed as if this was the height of comedy, while other reunion attendees nearby looked uncomfortable at the display. Some shot me sympathetic glances, but no one intervened. In that moment, I had a crystal clear realization Tyler had no idea who I was in the professional world. He didn't recognize my name in connection with the company. He had probably never even seen a photo of the founder and CEO, or if he hadn't made the connection to the nerdy girl from high school. I could have revealed myself right then and there. I could have watched his face fall as he realized his massive error in judgment. But something told me that wasn't the right approach. This wasn't just about personal satisfaction. This was about something more important. "I think I'm going to get some air," I said calmly, excusing myself from the increasingly uncomfortable situation. "That's right, walk away," Tyler called after me, emboldened by my retreat and the alcohol in his system. Some things never change, do they? Still can't handle the real world. As I stepped outside into the cool night air, my mind was surprisingly clear. This wasn't just a case of an old bully being rude at a reunion. This was about employees of my company displaying character traits that were fundamentally at odds with the culture I had worked so hard to build. A culture of respect, collaboration, and humility. The drive home that night was spent in deep reflection. Tyler, James, Derek, and Matt had revealed something important about themselves when they thought it didn't matter, when they thought they were punching down. What did that say about how they behaved in the workplace when they thought no one important was watching? Sleep eluded me as I weighed various options for handling the situation. By morning, I knew exactly what I needed to do. The morning after the reunion, I woke up with a clear mind and a firm resolve. This wasn't about petty revenge for a high school slight. This was about maintaining the integrity of the company I had built from the ground up. If Tyler and his friends felt comfortable publicly mocking someone they perceived as less successful, what did that say about how they treated colleagues, subordinates, or even clients? My first call was to Diane, our HR director, who had been with the company almost since its inception. I explained the situation in detail, being careful to focus on the professional implications rather than my personal feelings. "So these 4 employees approached you at the reunion, not knowing you were their CEO, and proceeded to behave in a condescending and unprofessional manner." Diane clarified, her tone concerned. "Exactly. And while I understand that people behave differently in social settings, the level of disrespect they displayed concerns me deeply about their character and how they represent our company." "I completely understand. Let me pull their files and see if there have been any previous issues reported." While waiting for Diane to gather information, I contacted our legal team to ensure that any actions we took would be properly documented and defensible. Mark, our general counsel, walked me through the relevant sections of our employee handbook and code of conduct. Our code of conduct does explicitly state that employees are expected to represent the company with professionalism and respect in public settings, especially when identifying themselves as Montgomery employees, which it sounds like they did, Mark confirmed. "What's my legal standing if I decide termination is necessary?" I asked. "All of our employees, including those who came in through acquisitions, are at will. Given that they publicly identified themselves as representatives of the company, while engaging in behavior that could be considered bullying and elitist, you would be on solid ground. But I would recommend documenting everything thoroughly and having HR present for any confrontation." By mid-morning, Diane called back with concerning news. "Lucy, I've reviewed their files, and there are some red flags here. Tyler Anderson has had 2 complaints filed against him for condescending behavior toward female developers, though nothing that quite crossed the line into actionable harassment. James Fletcher has been warned about taking credit for others' work. and there was an incident report about all four of them making another employee feel unwelcome after he joined from a community college background rather than a prestigious university. This information cemented my decision. These weren't isolated incidents or a one-time lapse in judgment. There was a pattern of behavior that was antithetical to the inclusive, respectful culture I had worked hard to establish. I next called Michael, my CFO, who had also attended the reunion as a fellow Westridge alumnus. He had witnessed the interaction from afar. "I couldn't believe what I was seeing," Michael said. "The way they spoke to you, not having any idea who you were, it was appalling. Are you thinking of addressing it?" "More than addressing it," I replied. "I'm considering termination for all four. From what HR has found, last night's behavior seems to be part of a pattern, not an isolated incident." "Do you want me to handle it?" Michael offered. "I know it must be uncomfortable given the personal nature of the encounter." I appreciated the offer, but knew this was something I needed to do myself. "No, I think this requires direct action from leadership. I'm going to visit the secondary office location today. Can you clear my afternoon schedule?" The secondary office where Tyler and his team worked was about 30 minutes from our headquarters. I typically worked from our main office and hadn't visited the secondary location in over a month. Many of the newer employees there, particularly those who had joined through the AccuHealth acquisition, had likely never met me in person. After consulting further with HR and legal to ensure all proper procedures would be followed, I prepared myself for the confrontation. I chose my outfit carefully: a tailored charcoal suit, crisp white blouse, and the pearl earrings again, this time paired with the matching necklace. Professional, authoritative, and unmistakably executive level. I asked Diane to alert the office manager at the secondary location that I would be visiting that afternoon, but specifically requested that the purpose of my visit not be announced. I also arranged for our head of security and a member of the HR team to accompany me as per Mark's recommendation for handling potentially volatile terminations. The drive to the office gave me time to reflect on whether I was making the right decision. Was I acting out of wounded pride or genuine concern for my company? After careful consideration, I was confident it was the latter. The behavior I had witnessed, combined with the previous complaints, painted a picture of employees who fundamentally misunderstood the values our company was built on. In a company dedicated to making healthcare more accessible and efficient, there was no room for elitism or disrespect. As I pulled into the parking lot of our secondary office building, I felt a strange sense of calm. This wasn't about revenge. This was about upholding standards and protecting the culture that had made Montgomery Health Analytics successful in the first place. Walking into the secondary office building that afternoon felt surreal. The security guard at the front desk did a double take when I presented my ID, clearly not used to seeing the CEO in person. The office manager, who had been notified of my visit, but not its purpose, hurried to greet me with nervous energy. "Ms. Montgomery, what a surprise. If I had known you were coming, I would have prepared a proper welcome," she said, leading me through the security doors. "That's exactly why I didn't announce it," I replied with a reassuring smile. "I wanted to see the office as it normally operates." The space was modern and open concept, with clusters of desks arranged by team function. As we walked through, I noticed employees looking up from their monitors with curious expressions. Some recognized me immediately and straightened in their seats. Others, likely newer additions from the acquisition, simply saw a woman in a suit being escorted by the office manager and returned to their work without much interest. "Is there anything specific you'd like to see first?" the office manager asked. "Actually, I need to locate Tyler Anderson, James Fletcher, Derek Schultz, and Matt Pearson. Could you point me to where they typically work?" If the office manager was surprised by my specific request, she hit it well. "Of course. They usually sit together in the break area around this time. They came in looking a bit rough this morning, mentioned something about attending a reunion last night." As we approached the break area, I could hear familiar voices and laughter. Through the glass wall, I saw the four of them clustered around a table, coffee cups in hand, looking somewhat disheveled and clearly nursing hangovers. They were laughing loudly, and I caught fragments of their conversation. "Can you believe Montgomery showed up looking like that? Like she just rolled out of bed?" and then trying to act like she knows anything about tech priceless. Should have seen her face when we told her where we work. My presence at the doorway silenced them mid-conversation. For a moment, Tyler stared at me without recognition, seeing only a professional woman in a suit, not the casually dressed person from the night before. Then confusion flickered across his face, followed by dawning horror as the office manager addressed me. "Ms. Montgomery, would you like me to call these gentlemen to the conference room for you?" The color drained from Tyler's face. James choked on his coffee. Derek and Matt exchanged panicked glances as the realization hit them all simultaneously. "Montgomery," Tyler repeated weakly. "As in, Lucy Montgomery, founder and CEO of Montgomery Health Analytics." I confirmed, maintaining a professional tone despite the satisfaction of seeing their expressions. "Yes, the same Lucy you were just discussing." The break room had gone completely silent. Other employees who had been eating lunch or grabbing coffee were now frozen in place, watching the scene unfold with wide eyes. "I'd like to call a brief impromptu meeting in the main workspace if you don't mind," I said to the office manager, who nodded, and immediately began spreading the word. Within minutes, the employees had gathered in the central area of the office. Some sat at their desks, while others stood around the periphery. Tyler, James, Derek, and Matt hovered at the back, looking like they might be sick. "Good afternoon, everyone." I began projecting my voice to reach the entire space. "For those who haven't met me in person, I'm Lucy Montgomery, the founder and CEO of this company. I typically work from our headquarters, but I believe it's important to maintain connections with all of our office locations." I paused, scanning the room and making eye contact with as many employees as possible. Montgomery Health Analytics was founded on a core set of values: innovation, integrity, inclusivity, and respect. These aren't just words on our website or posters on the wall. They're principles that should guide every interaction we have, whether with clients, with each other, or with the public. The room was completely silent now, everyone focused intently on my words. When you identify yourselves as Montgomery employees in public, you become representatives of those values. How you treat others, all others regardless of their perceived status or position, reflects directly on our company and the culture we've built together. I didn't look at Tyler and his friends, but I could feel their discomfort radiating across the room. I want to be clear that elitism, disrespect, and condescension have no place in our organization. We succeed because we value diverse perspectives, backgrounds, and experiences. We succeed because we treat everyone with dignity, whether they're a hospital CEO or a person you meet at a social event who you assume works an entry-level job. There were some confused glances among the employees who weren't aware of the previous night's events, but the message seemed to resonate nonetheless. I'd now like to ask Tyler Anderson, James Fletcher, Derek Schultz, and Matt Pearson to join me in the conference room, along with Diane from HR and Mark from Legal, who are here with me today. As the four men made their way to the front, visibly shaken, I addressed the rest of the staff one more time. Thank you all for the work you do every day. The success of this company depends on each of you bringing your best selves to work and embodying our values in everything you do. Please return to your tasks, and I'll try to meet with some of you individually before I leave today. The conference room door closed behind us with a soft click that somehow sounded ominous in the tense silence. Tyler, James, Derek, and Matt sat on one side of the table, while Diane, Mark, and I took seats opposite them. "Gentlemen," I began, my tone professional but firm, "I want to discuss the interaction we had last night at the Westridge High reunion, as well as some other matters that have been brought to my attention. Ms. Montgomery," Tyler started, his voice strained, "I want to apologize for—" I held up a hand to stop him. "I appreciate that you want to apologize now that you know who I am. But that's precisely the problem. Your behavior last night revealed that you treat people differently based on your perception of their status or success. That fundamentally contradicts the values of this company." Diane opened 4 folders and placed them on the table. "We've also reviewed your employment records and found several concerning incidents that align with the behavior displayed last night." She proceeded to outline the previous complaints: Tyler's condescension toward female developers, James taking credit for others' work, their collective treatment of a colleague with a community college background. This pattern of behavior suggests that last night wasn't an isolated incident fueled by alcohol, but rather a reflection of your everyday attitudes, I concluded. We were just joking around, Matt protested weakly. It was a high school reunion, everyone was giving each other a hard time. Was everyone mocking people they perceived as less successful? I asked pointedly. Because from what I observed, most of our classmates had matured beyond high school bullying tactics. We've worked incredibly hard for this company, Tyler said, a note of desperation entering his voice. Our team consistently meets its targets. We've brought in major clients. Results matter, I acknowledged. But how we achieve those results matters just as much. A toxic culture ultimately undermines performance, innovation, and retention. The complaints in your files suggest that your attitudes are already affecting your colleagues negatively. What are you saying exactly? James asked, though from his expression he already knew. I'm terminating all 4 of you effective immediately, I stated clearly. This decision is based on your violation of our code of conduct, the pattern of behavior documented in your files, and my direct observation of how you represent yourselves as Montgomery employees in public settings. The shock in the room was palpable. Derek looked like he might cry. Matt stared at the table. James ran a hand through his hair repeatedly. Tyler's face flushed with anger, then drained to pale as the reality sank in. You can't fire us just because we didn't recognize you at a reunion, Tyler said, an edge of defiance in his voice. I'm not firing you because you failed to recognize me, I corrected. I'm firing you because you demonstrated behaviors that are fundamentally incompatible with our company culture and values. The way you spoke about someone you believed was in a lower position than yourselves reveals character traits that have no place in the organization I've built. Mark slid termination papers across the table. You'll find the details of your severance packages here, along with information about the return of company property and continuation of benefits. Security will escort you to collect your personal belongings. Your access to company systems has already been revoked. This is ridiculous, Tyler muttered, though with significantly less conviction than before. We could sue for wrongful termination. You're welcome to consult with your own legal counsel, Mark replied calmly. But as at-will employees who violated clearly stated company policies, I don't recommend it. The meeting concluded with Diane explaining the logistics of their departure. Security personnel were waiting outside to escort each of them to their desks, supervise the collection of personal items, and then escort them from the building. As they filed out of the conference room, shoulders slumped in defeat, I felt no satisfaction or vindication. Only a quiet certainty that I had made the necessary decision to protect the culture and values that were the foundation of my company's success. The ripple effects of that afternoon's events spread quickly throughout the company. By the time I returned to headquarters the following morning, everyone had heard some version of what had happened. The story had morphed slightly in its retelling. Some versions had me dramatically revealing my identity at the reunion itself, others claimed I had secretly been evaluating the secondary office for weeks. But the core message remained intact. Disrespectful behavior would not be tolerated regardless of performance metrics. I decided to address the situation head-on, rather than letting rumor and speculation run wild. I called an all-hands meeting via video conference to connect all 3 of our office locations. I want to speak directly about the terminations that occurred yesterday. I began once everyone was connected. While I won't discuss the specific individuals involved out of respect for privacy, I do want to clarify the principles behind these decisions. I explained that the terminations were the result of multiple factors, violations of our code of conduct, documented patterns of behavior that contradicted our values, and public actions that misrepresented the company. I believe in second chances and growth opportunities, I continued, but I also believe that an organization's culture is its foundation. When that foundation is repeatedly undermined, we must take decisive action to preserve it. I opened the floor for questions, answering them as transparently as possible without divulging confidential details about the former employees. Some staff members expressed concern about job security, which I addressed by emphasizing the difference between honest mistakes and patterns of disrespectful behavior. In the weeks that followed, we implemented several changes across the organization. First, we launched a company-wide refresher training on our values and code of conduct, with specific scenarios to illustrate how these principles applied in everyday situations. I personally led some of these sessions, sharing my own experiences and mistakes to demonstrate that this wasn't about expecting perfection, but rather about continuous growth and self-awareness. We also restructured the departments affected by the terminations. Rather than immediately hiring replacements at the same level, we took the opportunity to reassess the team structure. This led to internal promotions for several deserving employees who had previously been overlooked, including a brilliant developer who had been repeatedly sidelined by Tyler and his friends due to her community college background. The board members and executive team were largely supportive of my decisions once they understood the full context. A few expressed concern about the abruptness of the terminations, suggesting that warnings or probationary periods might have been more appropriate. I listened to these perspectives and acknowledged that in different circumstances, a more graduated approach might have been warranted. But I also stood firm in my conviction that some behaviors so fundamentally contradicted our values that they required immediate action. Not everyone was pleased, of course. Tyler had formed alliances within the company, and some of his supporters viewed his termination as an overreaction or even a personal vendetta. A few resignation letters landed on my desk in the following months, most citing changes in company direction as the reason for departure. I didn't try to stop these exits. If someone fundamentally disagreed with upholding our core values, perhaps they weren't the right fit for our culture. About 2 weeks after the terminations, Tyler attempted to leverage his connections with one of our clients to cause problems. He reached out to a hospital administrator he had worked with, suggesting that service quality would decline without his team. The administrator, however, called me directly to discuss the situation, and after a frank conversation about our commitment to client service and the circumstances of Tyler's departure, the relationship remained intact. There was also a brief threat of legal action. Tyler's father, still wielding the same sense of entitlement his son had inherited, had apparently consulted with an attorney about a potential wrongful termination suit. The threat dissolved quickly once our legal team provided documentation of the pattern of behavior and the clear violations of company policy. The most surprising outcome of the incident was the positive shift in company culture. In our next quarterly anonymous employee survey, scores for psychological safety and inclusive environment increased significantly. Comments mentioned feeling more valued and respected, with several specifically noting that the handling of the terminations had demonstrated the company's genuine commitment to its stated values. Performance metrics told a similar story. The departments previously led by Tyler and his friends actually showed improvement in project completion times and quality assessments. Team members who had previously been hesitant to contribute ideas began speaking up more in meetings, leading to several innovative solutions to long-standing challenges. In the midst of these organizational changes, I also implemented new hiring practices that placed greater emphasis on character and cultural fit. Technical skills and experience remained important, but we added interview questions specifically designed to assess how candidates handled power dynamics and treated people at different levels. We also expanded our recruitment efforts to include more diverse educational backgrounds and career paths. 6 months after the incident, the company was stronger than ever. The story of the terminations had become something of a founding myth within the organization, a concrete example that our values weren't just words on a website, but principles we were willing to defend even at a cost. And while I never shared the full personal details of my history with Tyler, the general understanding that I had stood up to workplace bullying seemed to inspire others to advocate for themselves and their colleagues as well. It's been 6 months since that fateful high school reunion and the workplace confrontation that followed. As I sit in my office overlooking the city, I can't help but reflect on how that single evening changed not just my personal life, but the entire trajectory of my company. Montgomery Health Analytics has thrived in ways I couldn't have predicted. Without the toxic influence of Tyler and his friends, the secondary office location has transformed. Teams are collaborating more effectively, employee satisfaction scores have reached all-time highs, and innovation has accelerated. The client implementation department, previously led by Tyler, has reduced onboarding time by 30% under new leadership. What strikes me most is how removing just 4 individuals from an organization of 150 people could have such a profound impact. It's a reminder of how a small number of toxic personalities can poison an entire culture, and conversely, how removing that toxicity can allow everyone else to flourish. On a personal level, the experience forced me to examine my own leadership style. For years, I had preferred to stay in the background, letting my work speak for itself rather than asserting my authority. While humility remains an important value to me, I've recognized that visibility as a leader is sometimes necessary to uphold the standards and culture I believe in. In the weeks following the reunion, I received several messages from former classmates who had witnessed the exchange with Tyler. Most expressed admiration for how I had handled myself in the moment, keeping my composure despite the provocation. A few shared their own stories of Tyler's behavior in high school, and beyond painting a picture of someone who had never outgrown his need to feel superior by putting others down. One message particularly touched me. It came from Rachel, a quiet girl who had been in several of my classes, but whom I had never really known well. She wrote to tell me that Tyler had bullied her relentlessly in high school, making her feel worthless. Seeing him face consequences for similar behavior as an adult had given her a sense of closure she hadn't realized she needed. Perhaps the most surprising development was an email I received from Tyler himself about 4 months after his termination. He had found a new position at a smaller company and had apparently done some reflection on what had happened. "I want to apologize for my behavior both at the reunion and during my time at Montgomery," and he wrote. "Losing my job forced me to take a hard look at myself and the way I treat others. I'm not proud of what I saw. While I don't expect forgiveness or a response, I wanted you to know that the experience has changed me, and I'm working to be better." I sat with that email for several days, considering whether and how to respond. In the end, I sent a brief reply acknowledging his apology and wishing him well in his efforts to change. I couldn't undo the termination or the consequences of his actions, but I could recognize his attempt at accountability as a positive step. The experience has fundamentally changed how I define success. For years, I measured it in terms of company valuation, client acquisition, and market share. Those metrics still matter, of course. We're running a business, not a charity. But I've developed a deeper appreciation for the human elements of success, creating a workplace where people feel valued, respected, and able to do their best work. This perspective led me to launch 2 new initiatives that I'm particularly proud of. The first is a mentorship program specifically designed for young women in tech from non-traditional backgrounds. Having faced my own struggles breaking into the industry, I wanted to create pathways for others who might be overlooked because they don't fit the typical tech prodigy mold. The second initiative involves regular speaking engagements at my alma mater and other local colleges, discussing not just entrepreneurship and technical skills, but workplace culture and ethical leadership. I share the story of the reunion and its aftermath with names and identifying details changed, of course, as a case study in how character reveals itself when people think no one important is watching. As for my high school experiences, I finally made peace with them. The reunion, despite its dramatic conclusion, gave me closure on that chapter of my life. I saw that many of the social hierarchies that seemed so permanent and important as teenagers had dissolved in the face of adult realities. The popular kids weren't necessarily the successful ones. The overlooked students hadn't remained overlooked in the wider world. My company continues to grow now, expanding into international markets and developing new products that promise to make healthcare data even more accessible and secure. We recently opened a 4th office location and crossed the 200-employee mark. Our culture remains our most valuable asset, with new hires often citing our reputation for respect and inclusivity as a primary reason for wanting to join the team. In many ways, that night at the reunion was a gift. An uncomfortable one, certainly, but valuable nonetheless. It forced me to stand up not just for myself, but for the values I believe in. It revealed weaknesses in our organization that might have festered unaddressed for years. and it reminded me that true leadership isn't about titles or authority, but about the courage to uphold principles even when it's difficult. I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I had revealed my identity to Tyler at the reunion itself. It might have been momentarily satisfying to see the shock on his face, but I think the outcome we reached was ultimately more meaningful. He and his friends revealed their true characters when they thought it didn't matter, and faced consequences not because of who I was, but because of who they chose to be. The lesson I take from all of this, and the one I try to share with others, is that integrity isn't about how you act when everyone is watching. It's about how you treat people when you think the interaction doesn't matter. It's about recognizing that every person deserves respect not because of their title or position or what they can do for you, but simply because they're human. Have you ever had to stand up to workplace bullying or toxic behavior? How did you handle it, and what did you learn from the experience? Share your story in the comments below. If this video resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe to hear more workplace stories, and share with someone who might be dealing with difficult colleagues. Remember that your character is revealed in how you treat people when you think no one is looking. Thank you for listening, and I wish you the courage to always stand up for what's right, even when it's uncomfortable.